Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. As information about Poppy and Jack started to come to light, John Finnegan, a man who has always taken great satisfaction in bringing order out of chaos, found his entire world upended. Finn was left to deal with issues of loyalty, love, and treachery as his once neatly compartmentalized understanding of his family's complex dynamics fell apart. The base of his existence had been his marriage to Steffi Forrester, but suddenly that foundation was beginning to seem shaky as the mysteries about his biological family threatened to destroy all he valued. The storm started when Poppy, the mysterious character who had long lingered on the edges of Finn's life, paid him an unexpected visit. Finn had heard rumors about her relationship with Jack before, but he had never bothered to find out more. That changed when Poppy decided it was time for Finn to know the truth, either out of desperation or shame. Poppy sat across from him in the gloom of his office, her expression a mix of anxious vigor and resolute determination. "I need to tell you something about your father, about Jack," she said, her voice a little shaky. Finn could never have predicted the story she told him. Poppy claimed that although her connection with Jack had begun innocently enough, it had swiftly developed into something far more complex and sinister. For years, Jack, who had always portrayed himself as a man of unwavering principles, had been having a tumultuous affair with Poppy while lying to Lee and Finn. However, that wasn't the most startling aspect of her disclosure. Poppy alluded to a more profound and agonizing secret that was connected to Finn's identity. Sheila Carter, the constant presence in Finn's life, planned her own perverse intervention while he was still processing Poppy's confession. In order to obtain enough information to coerce a run-in that would serve her cunning plan, Sheila had been surreptitiously watching Jack and Poppy. Sheila encountered Jack and Poppy in a quiet spot of Il Giardino, encircling them like a predator playing with its victim. Sheila hissed, her voice brimming with poison, "Well, isn't this cozy? I always knew you two had something to hide, Jack and Poppy." Poppy's eyes flew about the room, looking for an exit that didn't exist, while Jack's face went pale. Sheila quickly took advantage of the situation by making suggestive comments and veiled threats that suggested she knew more than she was admitting. Sheila's ultimate objective was to use the circumstance to recover access to Finn, but it was a deliberate action meant to upset both Jack and Poppy. Lee Finnegan, meanwhile, was battling her own emotional issues. She was devastated and incensed after learning of Jack's adultery and his potential involvement in yet another betrayal. In their family home, she addressed Finn, expressing her feelings in a voice that was a mix of pain and rage. "Finn," Lee murmured, her voice breaking, "I gave everything to this family. I supported Jack through every difficulty and error. And I now discover that he has been deceiving me all along? That he had deceived us?" Finn attempted to provide consolation, but he was torn between wanting to know the whole extent of Jack and Poppy's relationship and being loyal to his mother. However, Lee had no desire to be comforted. She wanted justice for the years she had lived in what now seemed to be a deception, and she wanted answers. As the days passed, Finn was pulled further and further into the web of betrayals and secrets that encircled him. Finn had never seen Jack's side before, but Poppy's biography showed him to be a man who could manipulate and deceive on a level that Finn found difficult to understand. Sheila's encounter with Jack and Poppy merely fueled the flames, generating a tense and suspicious environment that threatened to overwhelm all parties. Finn made an effort to be a rock during it all, not only for Steffi and their family but also for himself. Even yet, he was unable to ignore the toll these disclosures were having on him. Finn was forced to doubt everything he believed to be true about his parents and himself because the once unmistakable boundaries between right and wrong, truth and deceit, had become hopelessly hazy. One thing was clear to Finn as he stood on the edge of this new reality: the road ahead would not be simple. The fragile serenity he had labored so hard to create could be destroyed by the truth about Jack, Poppy, and their relationship to his life. Finn also knew that the fight for his family's future was just getting started because Sheila was hiding in the shadows, waiting to take advantage of any vulnerability. Ultimately, Sheila's deceptive meddling, Finn's learning of Poppy's past, and Lee's emotional outburst were all parts of a jigsaw that Finn was resolved to solve. He couldn't help but wonder, though, as he dug deeper into the complex web of lies and secrets, would the truth release him or would it destroy everything he had worked so hard to defend? The paternity test findings were supposed to be a turning point, but instead they caused severe emotional pain for all parties, particularly Lee Finnegan and Poppy, two women entangled in a web of family secrets. After years of fighting to keep her family together, Lee was about to get a revelation that would change her life. Tension was evident as the clean envelope with the paternity results sat on the kitchen counter, unopened. It was about trust, treachery, and the disintegration of relationships that were already on the verge of collapse, not just biology. Lee had always been the strongest person alive. She had prided herself on her fortitude as a wife who had supported Jack despite his shortcomings and transgressions, and as a loving mother to Finn. However, the tempest that had swept through her family in recent weeks caught even Lee off guard. Long hidden beneath layers of deceit, Jack and Poppy's affair had suddenly surfaced. And now, like a ticking time bomb, the mystery of Luna's paternity lingered in the air, waiting to detonate. The stakes were as great for Poppy. Her association with Jack had raised eyebrows and caused tongues to wag, and she had entered the Finnegan family's sphere of suspicion. However, Poppy had withheld a portion of her story that would have explained her desperate attempt to learn the truth about Luna's paternity. Her hands shook and her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she and Lee sat down to finally open the envelope. Poppy murmured softly, her voice full of passion, "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Lee, I never intended to cause you any harm. I never intended to cause harm to anyone." Lee took a moment to react, her visage steely and her emotions carefully controlled. Rather, she gazed at the envelope as though it contained the answers to all of her questions and the ability to change the course of her life. "So why did you?" Lee eventually inquired, her tone piercing but not harsh. "Poppy, why did you do any of it?" The ensuing hush was deafening. Poppy opened her mouth to reply, but she didn't say anything. She just shook her head, her eyes falling to the ground and her shoulders slumping in shame. The world seemed to stop when Lee finally ripped the envelope open and scanned the results. As her eyes flew across the page, reading and rereading the words that validated what she had always feared, her hands clenched around the paper. Jack wasn't the father of Luna. Her lifelong partner, who had already violated her confidence in several ways, had lied once more. However, the disclosure of Luna's father's true identity was what really shocked Lee, not only Jack's deceit. Breathless and wobbly, the name on the report was a shock to her system. Her eyes were wide with surprise and incredulity as she turned to face Poppy. "It's Finn," Lee said in a scarcely discernible whisper. "Luna's father is Finn." Poppy was struck like a freight train by the realization. She cried uncontrollably as she tried to comprehend the implications of this for Finn, Luna, and herself. Poppy sobbed, gripping the edge of the table as though it were the only thing holding her up. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear, Lee, I had no idea." Despite her want to believe her, Lee was unable to resist her feelings of betrayal and rage. It was nearly unbearable to realize that her pride and pleasure, her kid, had been drawn into this web of dishonesty and deceit. She briefly got the impression that the earth had vanished beneath her feet, leaving her adrift in an ambiguity of anguish and doubt. "How did this occur?" Lee demanded, raising her voice as she spoke. "Poppy, how could you not know? Jack was with you. What role does Finn have in any of this?" Poppy shook her head, finding it hard to speak clearly due to her tears. Her words stumbled over one another as she hurried to clarify, "It was before Jack. I didn't believe it was feasible. I didn't believe Finn could be the culprit. However, now." As the seriousness of the situation set in, the room went silent once more. Lee felt betrayed on several levels by the revelation. Poppy's presence in their lives suddenly bore a weight she hadn't expected, on top of Jack's deception. Additionally, her son Finn, who had always represented stability and promise, was now embroiled in a scandal that threatened to destroy their family. However, once the first shock subsided, Lee discovered that she was struggling with compassion. The other woman was equally as much a victim of Jack's deceptions as she was, she thought as she glanced at Poppy, who was hunched over in a chair with her face buried in her hands. Poppy hadn't anticipated for her life to come into such a dramatic and tragic intersection with the Finnegan family, nor had she asked for this. Lee's voice grew softer as she replied, "I don't know what we're supposed to do now. However, I am certain that Finn should be informed of the reality. He is entitled to be aware of Luna. Poppy's eyes were puffy and red when she gazed up. Do you believe he will despise me? With a quivering voice, she inquired. Lee paused before responding. Finally, she remarked, Finn has a good heart. But for him everything will change because of this. For everyone. For a long time, the two women sat in quiet, each deep in her own thoughts. In addition to a biological link, the paternity test results had uncovered a string of betrayals and errors that would require time and effort to sort out. Lee and Poppy were aware that the path ahead would not be simple as they readied themselves to deal with the consequences of their discovery. There would be painful moments, strained relationships, and challenging conversations. Despite how overwhelming the work appeared, there remained a glimmer of hope, a chance to repair and go on. Lee's adventure would start with a discussion with Finn. Additionally, it would need Poppy to face her history and figure out how to atone for the suffering she had caused. Together, they would need to go through the complex web of feelings and connections that had led them here in the hopes that the truth would finally release them. Every second felt like a lifetime as Poppy's secret teetered on the brink of revelation, creating a tense atmosphere in the room. The uncertainties about Luna's paternity had hovered over the Finnegan family for weeks, ready to burst at any time like a rain cloud. However, no one could have foreseen the truth's explosive power or its profound impact. Everything was about to change as it was revealed that Poppy had been concealing a tryst with Finn, shattering trust and relationships like a hurricane. Poppy sat with her hands clutched tightly in her lap across from Finn in Lee's living room. Her typical grace had been replaced by obvious worry, and she didn't look confident at all. As she prepared to reveal a secret she had been hiding for years, her breathing became shallow and her fingers trembled. Finn, who was sitting across from her, had a perplexed look on his face and a wrinkled brow as he attempted to piece together the pieces of a story he was still unaware he was a part of. Lee, meantime, stood by the window with her arms folded and her eyes piercing and unblinking, as though she were bracing herself for whatever surprise was on the horizon. Poppy said, her voice just above a whisper, I don't even know where to begin. Begin with the truth, Lee interrupted in a cold tone. And don't omit anything. Finn's expression was one of bewilderment as he looked between the two women. What's happening? With a hint of discomfort in his voice, he inquired. Why does it feel like a surprise is coming? Poppy glanced at Lee and then back at Finn. She said, her voice shaking, because you are. And I really apologize, Finn. This is something I never wanted to occur. Finn leaned forward, his bewilderment turning into annoyance. Poppy, what are you talking about? What did you want to happen? Poppy inhaled deeply while struggling to find the appropriate words, her eyes falling to the ground. With hesitation, she said, it was years ago. Before all of this, before you had Hayes, before you met Steffi. I had a connection with you, Finn. Finn felt the words strike him like a blow to the body. His face was a mixture of shock and incredulity as he reclined in his chair. Wait, what? A link? Poppy, what are you saying? Like a fragile thread, Lee's patience broke. Lee's voice pierced the room like a knife as she added plainly, what she's saying, Finn, is that she slept with you. Finn looked at Poppy in shock, his mouth hanging open. Is that accurate? He insisted. Did we? With tears in her eyes, Poppy nodded. Yes, she said, Finn. We did. I've regretted that error ever since it happened. However, it did occur. Finn combed through his hair, trying to process this new information as his thoughts raced. Why am I only now learning about this? His voice was filled with perplexity and rage as he asked. Why didn't you inform me earlier? Poppy acknowledged, because I didn't think it mattered. I believed at the time that it was an isolated incident that would never resurface to haunt us either. However, after that. She looked anxiously at Lee, who was hawk-eyeing her as her voice faltered. So what? Finn, whose patience was running low, pressed. When Poppy finally forced herself to say the words she had been dreading, she hesitated, her hands shaking. Because of Luna, she muttered. Luna is your daughter, Finn. With Poppy's revelation looming over them like a dense mist, the room went silent. Finn's mind reeled from what he had just heard, and he stared at her. "Luna, my daughter?" He said it again, as though saying it out loud would make it seem less genuine. With tears running down her cheeks, Poppy nodded. "Yes," she replied. "At first, I wasn't positive. I reasoned that Jack might be her father. However, upon the paternity test..." Holding up a hand, Finn interrupted, saying, "Wait. Was a paternity test conducted? And you hadn't considered telling me any of this earlier?" Poppy said in a broken voice, "I was afraid. Finn, I didn't intend to destroy your life. You have a lovely family and are married to Steffi, and I didn't want to ruin that for you." With a look of astonishment on his face, Finn shook his head. "This is unreal," he whispered. "You've been deceiving me all along, leading me to believe that Luna had nothing to do with me, and now you're just letting me know about this as if it were nothing?" "It isn't nothing," Poppy replied hastily. "I apologize for keeping this from you. I understand how much it alters everything. However, you were entitled to the truth." Lee, who had been quiet the entire time, eventually opened his mouth. Her voice was clipped and icy as she stated, "This isn't just about Finn and Poppy. This has to do with Luna. She is the one who is entangled in this situation and will bear the brunt of the consequences if we are unable to resolve it." Finn, clearly frustrated, turned to his mother. He confessed, "Mom, I'm not even sure where to start. How should I proceed? How can I possibly comprehend this?" Despite her wrath, Lee's mother instincts kicked in and she softened a little. She murmured softly, "One step at a time. You must give Luna your full attention right now. Finn, she's your daughter. Regardless of how chaotic the situation is, that remains unchanged." Slowly, as the gravity of the situation finally set in, Finn nodded. He reiterated, "Luna is my daughter," in a tone that was a mix of wonder and melancholy. I am at a loss for words." Poppy brushed away her tears, a look of relief mixed with fear on her face. "I understand this is a lot to process," she uttered quietly. "And I'm aware that I've made some really big blunders. However, I want to act in Luna's best interests. Whatever that may entail, I am prepared to undertake it." Finn looked at her, his feelings battling inside of him. Although he was angry at Poppy for holding such a significant secret from him, he also found it impossible to dismiss the sincerity in her voice. He was aware that she was struggling with the implications of this discovery for their futures, just as he was. The reality of their new normal started to take shape as the three of them sat in nervous silence. There was no turning back after the betrayals and lies were exposed. There remained, however, a ray of optimism within the chaos, the opportunity to reconstruct something new from the ruins of their errors. Although Finn had no idea what lay ahead, he was certain that Luna was his daughter and that he would stop at nothing to be the parent she deserved. Poppy and Lee, on the other hand, also had choices to make that would affect their broken family's future. For the time being, though, they could only move forward cautiously in the hopes that the truth would lead them to a better future. It began as a typical evening, but everything fell apart in an instant when Poppy showed up at Finn and Steffi's house without warning. Even Steffi's wildest fears couldn't have prepared her for the shocking revelation that was going to rock her life, yet she had always felt a weird discomfort when Poppy was near. Unaware of the gravity of what was about to happen, Finn greeted Poppy inside with his customary composure. But as soon as Poppy started talking, that silence was broken. Poppy stood in the living room and said, "Finn," her voice shaking, "I can no longer keep this a secret. You need to learn the truth about Luna." Steffi's eyes narrowed as she looked up instantly from where she had been sitting on the couch, browsing through her phone. "What's the truth?" Her tone was tinged with mistrust as she demanded. Finn's perplexity increased as he glanced between the two women. "What are you talking about, Poppy?" His tone was guarded but inquisitive as he asked. Poppy inhaled deeply while her hands twitched uneasily. She started by saying, Luna isn't who you think she is. Finn, she is more than just a kid in your family's sphere. She is your daughter." Deathly silence fell in the room. When Poppy's words finally hit home, Finn froze, his face changing from one of bewilderment to one of shock. In contrast, Steffi leaped to her feet, her expression a mix of anger and incredulity. "What just did you say?" Her voice was low and menacing as she hissed. Poppy glanced to Steffi, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm really sorry," she said sincerely. "None of this was intended by me. Years had passed before the two of you were together. Luna was the outcome of the fleeting moment that Finn and I shared." Finn's mind reeling, he lurched back as though he had been punched. "Are you implying that Luna is my daughter?" His voice was empty as he asked. Poppy confirmed, her voice cracking, "Yes. It wasn't until recently that I was certain. I couldn't hide it from you any longer, but I didn't want to ruin your life." Steffi's response was quick and furious. "You were no longer able to hide it from him," she said it again, raising her voice. "So you just dropped this bomb in the midst of our house instead? Midway through our marriage?" Despite flinching at Steffi's rage, Poppy refused to back down. She replied in an imploring tone, "I know this is devastating. However, Finn is entitled to the truth. Luna is entitled to know her dad." Finn raked a hand through his hair, still reeling, his mind a flurry of conflicting feelings. "Poppy, why now?" His voice was trembling as he asked. "Why don't you tell me now?" "I was afraid," Poppy said. "I couldn't bear the guilt any longer, but I didn't want to destroy everything you've worked so hard to achieve with Steffi." Steffi blew up. "The shame was too much for you to handle? How about me? How about our family? Are you aware of what you have done?" As Poppy gazed at Steffi, tears fell down her cheeks. She said, "I know you despise me. I don't blame you either. However, this is about Luna, not just about us. She has a right to know her origins." Finn intervened with a firm but hurt voice. He looked between the two women and ordered, "Stop. We must find a solution, for Luna's sake, even though this is a mess." It became evident that this realization had completely altered everything as Steffi looked at Finn with a broken heart. Nothing would ever be the same in their lives.